finding homes. Thank you all for coming. We are extremely excited to share our work with you. The 12 students performing tonight are part of the DukeImmerse LEAPS program. It's been an exciting semester for all of us, as we've been fortunate enough to participate in the inaugural semester of this pilot program, co-sponsored by the Keenan Institute for Ethics and the Office for Undergraduate Education. Leaving Home, the Law, Ethics, and Political Economy of Displacement, LEAPS, has been an amazing opportunity for us to engage or immerse ourselves in the study of refugees and forced migration. The international refugee problem is not one that can be ignored. The United States High Commissioner for Refugees, or the UNHCR, the leading agency in the protection and resolution of refugee problems, acknowledges some 15 million persons worldwide as refugees. This number is only a fraction of the nearly 50 million displaced persons throughout the world. While there are issues that all displaced persons have in common, DukeImmerse LEAPS focus specifically on that subset of persons legally defined as refugees. Persons who have fled their home country and cannot return because they have a well-founded fear of persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership of a particular social group. As straightforward as this definition seems, the real-life delineation is much more complex. Was the persecution actually personally targeted? Is there a strong enough fear of persecution? Is that person's account of his or her experiences believable? These are the questions that shape the defining of an individual as a refugee. Once defined as a refugee, a person's future remains uncertain. Most refugees will receive support in the country to which they fled until they can voluntarily and safely return to their home country. A small number of refugees will be allowed to become citizens in the country to which they fled, and an even smaller number, primarily those who are at highest risk, will be resettled in a third country. The refugee experience is often associated with refugee camps, but that is not the universal experience. Around the world, refugees are living in broadly varying conditions, some in well-established camps, others in collective centers or makeshift shelters. More than half of the world's refugees live in urban areas. Whether in camps, cities, or in between, all refugees lack the basic protections of citizenship and have no clear future. They have been uprooted, and they do not know where or when they will be able to put down new roots. Our program of study this semester has provided us with a broad understanding of the dynamics and drivers of global displacement, and has also given us particular insights into the experiences of Bhutanese and Iraqi refugees, which have local as well as global dimensions. Locally, while fewer than 1% of refugees worldwide will ever resettle, the U.S. Department of State has made these two groups a priority for resettlement, and many Iraqis and Bhutanese refugees have now become our neighbors here in North Carolina. Globally, the two groups represent distinct displacement trajectories. The exodus of refugees from Iraq has been dispersed throughout the Middle East, with large concentrations in major cities like Cairo, while the Bhutanese refugees have been largely concentrated in camps in a single region in the plains of eastern Nepal. We were able to study these two distinct refugee populations through a comparative lens in order to develop a deeper understanding of the complex phenomena of displacement. Key contrasts between the two populations allowed for a unique perspective on international displacement. The Bhutanese came from agricultural backgrounds and have been living in Nepal for 2 decades, supported by international aid organizations. To some Bhutanese refugees, life in the camps is all they have ever known. They feel a strong sense of community there, along with a mixture of fear and excitement about the chance resettlement is bringing to their lives. Compare them to the Iraqis, typically highly educated professionals whose flight from their homes has occurred in more recent years, and who have found the countries where they sought protection to be consumed by their own unrest. Dispersed across the city of Cairo, the Iraqi refugees we met have little sense of community and no secure basis of support. The futures of resettlement also vary drastically between the two groups. Despite the fact that Iraqi refugees far outnumber Bhutanese refugees, vastly higher numbers of Bhutanese than Iraqi refugees are resettled each month. For example, one typical month last summer, nearly 2,000 Bhutanese refugees resettled to the U.S., compared with about half as many Iraqis refugees in the same month. These differences are largely a product of the distinct historical, political, and international security situations of the two populations. In our Immerse program, we began our study of refugees where the journey of many of them had, at least, temporarily ended, here in the Durham region, where prominent communities of Bhutanese and Iraqis are developing. We were able to connect with them over the course of the semester through both community engagement and research. Our interactions with the communities here revealed the struggles refugees face upon resettlement, thus illuminating that the challenges of displacement continue even after a refugee is given a path to citizenship in a new country. Working to address gaps in the resettlement process, We developed community engagement projects, specifically targeting the problems that individuals in the refugee community here identified. We focused primarily on the idleness and isolation that many refugees face upon resettlement to a strange land. We developed projects that would advance and promote skills and occupations the refugees pursued prior to resettlement, while also hoping to engage the refugees in the Durham community. Our goal is for these programs to continue to develop and grow long after the semester of immersive ended. This semester also allowed us to dive into research. With training in the methods and ethics of field-based research under our belts, we went abroad to study displacement experience of the Bhutanese and Iraqi refugee populations. For 4 weeks during the semester, we moved out of the classroom and into the field, 6 of us in Cairo, Egypt, 6 in Dhamak, Nepal. Throughout our time abroad, we were able to connect with the local refugee communities and conducted a series of life story interviews with the refugees. We each had an individual theme in mind as we explored the question of how displacement affects the moral worlds of refugees. What possibilities exist for them to live a life of meaning? What were the goals and dreams and relationships they valued before they were forced to flee their homes? And how has displacement affected their ability to pursue those things they held dear? Have their experiences fundamentally changed their beliefs about what is good and bad in the world? Through our life story interviews, we learn not only about the history of each person's displacement and how they managed to sustain their lives on a day-to-day basis, but also how the experience of displacement shaped their sense of identity, memories of the past, and hopes for the future. While the field experience provided us each with rich content for our research projects, a significant benefit of the work was our ability to develop relationships with the individuals whom we interviewed. Sitting beside the refugees and listening as they told us their stories brought the global issues we had studied here at Duke closer to heart, as we saw the experiences of displacement through the words and expressions of the refugees themselves. We have developed the monologues we are presenting tonight as a way to share some of those words with you, to give you the opportunity, as we have, to see the refugees as mothers, fathers, sons, students, friends, widows, as humans. Our interview selection each highlight a different element of the refugee experience that resonated throughout many of their stories. Before presenting the monologues, I would like to thank, on behalf of all 12 students and the program as a whole, all of the refugees we interviewed throughout our fieldwork. They shared their stories, their hearts, their hopes, and their homes with us, and for that we are deeply grateful. As we begin, mind that the program is divided into 2 portions, focusing first on the Bhutanese refugees and second on the Iraqi, each preceded by an introduction of the population's background. We kindly ask that you silence your cell phones, refrain from flash photography, and hold all applause until after the closing remarks of the show. We hope you enjoy it.
Beginning in the early 1990s, members of an ethnic minority population living in southern Bhutan began to flee rising levels of violence and persecution from the Bhutanese government. Denied their citizenship rights due to religious and cultural differences with the majority population, these Bhutanese refugees eventually sought protection in UNHCR-established camps in Nepal. Ultimately, the numbers swelled to over 100,000 refugees, housed in 7 camps in eastern Nepal. Initially, there was some hope that the government of Nepal would agree to the integration of the refugees and offer them access to Nepali citizenship. However, Nepal has been consumed by its own political upheaval over the past 20 years, including a Maoist rebellion that began in 1995 and continued for the next decade. This civil war resulted in the abolition of the monarchy and the transformation of Nepal into a republic, which continues to struggle for stability. Due to these events and the political challenges posed by other refugee populations in Nepal, the integration of Bhutanese refugees has not been a viable option. Meanwhile, the Nepali government has entered into repeated talks with the government of Bhutan, attempting to secure an agreement to allow the safe return of refugees to their homes. All of these talks failed. Therefore, in 2006, it was decided that the only possibility for the Bhutanese refugees to enjoy the protections of citizenship would be for them to be resettled to other countries. Since the beginning of 2008, over 60,000 Bhutanese refugees have been resettled to 8 countries. Of these, the vast majority, over 50,000, have been resettled to the United States. Currently, Bhutanese refugees are being resettled at a rapid pace, and as many as 400 to 500 people leave the camps each week, bound for lives in a new country. While resettlement brings excitement and hope for a secure future, it also brings daily changes for all Bhutanese refugees. Those who are departing for resettlement face the anxiety of leaving behind friends and the comfort of the life they have known for nearly 20 years, heading for a foreign land filled with unfamiliar traditions and unknown challenges. Some remain in the camps, waiting to resettle, while others stay in hopes of returning to Bhutan or remaining in Nepal. The population still in the camps faces the loss of neighbors and companions. Parents lose children and grandchildren, and siblings become separated by continents. Each change that is experienced on a personal level adds up to a large impact on a camp level as well. Schools lose teachers and principals and counselors. Camp committees lose leaders. Entire camps close as their dwindling numbers allow for consolidation, which helps with the delivery of aid, but also dismantles communities. There are now only 3 camps, including Kadunabari, Sanischare, and Beldangi. Kadunabari is expected to close by the end of June this year, sending the remaining residents to live in Sanischare and Beldangi. Bhutanese refugees have been resettled all over the United States, and they receive basic employment and educational support from federally funded programs. Many people look forward to resettlement so that they can be reunited with family members who have resettled ahead of them. For others, their primary goal for resettlement might be to pursue an education or to begin a new career. However, these hopes are tempered by the knowledge that the education and skills they have acquired in the camps may not be sufficient to allow them to embark immediately in pursuit of their goals. For some refugees, the reason for resettlement is the realization that they have no other choice, and they risk being completely alone and separated from their loved ones if they do not go. And for some, it is the sheer desire to discover new things and to experience life in a country that has a developed economy and a stable political system. In Nepal, several international aid organizations help to manage and organize the camps. The most prominent organizations that help to manage resettlement, organize life in the camps, and sustain the communities are the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the International Organization for Migration, and the World Food Program. The World Food Program supplies rations to households with carefully determined ration sizes that allow each person to have 2,100 calories per day. These calories come mostly from beans, rice, and vitamin supplements, and the rations do not include fruits or vegetables. Remittances and work in Nepal's informal economy are therefore very important in sustaining camp life, providing resources with which families can supplement the rations and purchase clothing, personal items, and materials for their homes. Life in the camps can be very difficult, providing a mixture of hard work and extreme idleness. They must build and repair their own huts, transport heavy loads on their backs, and if they have the skills, spend hours sewing or practicing metalwork or carpentry. At the same time, the camp offers little by means of recreation, and there are no opportunities for legal paid employment in Nepal. The community strongly values an active lifestyle and hard work, but it is given little chance to put these values to productive use. Nepali citizens have mixed reactions to the role of Bhutanese refugees in their society and their economy. The cheap labor provided by the refugees has both stimulated the economy and increased competition for the extremely limited number of available jobs. The camps have also been claimed for deforestation in eastern Nepal. At the same time, many Nepali citizens who reside in the towns closest to the camps have developed relationships with the refugees, with some even marrying refugees. They value the connections they have made with these refugees and regret their departure and the prospect of the economic and social changes brought by the closing of the camps. Bhutanese refugees have suffered from their original expulsion from Bhutan and the injustices they face there. More suffering continues to occur through the pain of resettlement and difficulties in camp lives. However, there are also some hopeful improvements within the camps through successful stories of community and resettlement. These stories we will present from the camps demonstrate some of the complex history and important themes present in the lives of Bhutanese refugees. The life stories of refugees in these monologues represent some of the sadness, joy, hope, and friendship we witness while in the camps and communities of Nepal.
Akshita,
Prakash,
Bishnu,
Indra,
Chandra,
Neha.
Akshita, female, age 43, Beldangi 2, Nepal. I remember my 2-story house, the oranges, cattle, mountains, fields, the school that I never attended because it was too far away and my parents didn't care much for my education. I spent my childhood at this house in Bhutan, working in the fields with my friends, which provided me happiness. When I was 18, a man who I'd never met before came to my house and proposed marriage. My parents accepted on my behalf. I spent my last 5 years in Bhutan feeling sad in my transition to life as a daughter-in-law. I lived with my husband's family and did all of their household work. When I was pregnant with my second child, we left Bhutan. The king and queen of Bhutan were like our parents, but we did something wrong. We made a mistake, so we had to leave. It was difficult to be pregnant at this time. I had pain in my stomach and back, and it was hot in Nepal. We traveled here in a truck with many people. I am now a Bhutanese refugee, and it's hard to remember before this time. Bhutanese refugees are like parrots being kept in a cage. Their owner still feeds them, but this doesn't compare to the parrot in the jungle that moves more freely. I myself have lived on the edge of the Beldangi jungle in a small bamboo hut for 20 years. I live with my 6 children, and their father lives in a nearby hut with his second wife and 5 other children. I work in the host community, labor in the paddy fields, and spin rope to contribute to my large family. Because I'm a mother to so many and one of 2 wives, camp administrators have identified me as a vulnerable woman. For this reason, I received job training. I trained for 9 days learning how to develop fertilizer, and I completed the training even though I'm undereducated. A few years ago, I tried to attend adult literacy classes in the camps, but couldn't because I have to take care of my children without support from my husband. So now, I just continue the hard labor. I'm proud, though, to be able to contribute to my family in this way, and it gives me independence, which is important. My wishes for the future? I hope to resettle to America. However, I have other wishes that will not be fulfilled because I am a refugee. Refugees just can't fulfill certain wishes. If my life were a book, the title would be Sad Remembrances of a Hard Worker.
Prakash Krishna Rai, male, age 40, Beldangi 2, Nepal. Are you Christian? What religion are you? When I came from Bhutan, I was 22 years old. I got to the camp and I had much leisure time. I eventually got into bad company and had bad habits. I would use alcohol every day. So I did things to occupy my time. I became a teacher, but my bad habits continued. And even when I was a social worker in the camps, I still could not rid myself of my bad habits. Then one day, I met a father from the church, and he told me of the good news. He told me that I could achieve physical and mental salvation, eternal satisfaction with Jesus Christ, with only Jesus Christ. My life is totally different now that I am a believer. Totally different. Now, I have eternal satisfaction. Now, the little income we have is enough to buy more rice and vegetables, and we can survive adequately. Now, I have stopped the abuse. My health improved physically. Now, I am the president of a union of 30 churches in the camp. I tell the good news to people of other religions to show them the true path to God, but I do not do any harm unto them. Since I am a believer, I know that we are all sons and daughters of God. I do not think people view me negatively because I am a Christian. We have good relations with our neighbors. My family still invites them to Christmas celebrations, and they invite us to Hindu festivals. But I do not go. because I know that what they celebrate is false. My life is better because I love Jesus. Jesus comes into my life and changes me. If my life were a book, the title would be Struggles Eased by Faith.
Bishnu Bahadur Sharma, male, age 74, Sanischare Camp, Nepal. I've spent the past 20 years of my life living in the camp Sanischare. Right now, our community is changing. Every week, more and more people are resettling to other countries, like America, Australia, Denmark. But I do not want to resettle to another country. I want to go back to my mother country, Bhutan, or stay here in Nepal. I'm just happy staying here in Nepal. I go to the Older Person Recreation Center every day. At the recreation center, I am able to do whatever I want with my friends around me. We sing songs together, read holy books. Look, see Durga reading over there? He comes and reads every day from dawn until dusk. We also share our feelings. We talk both about the joys and sadness we experience daily and what has happened to us in the past. It is important to talk about what has happened and to look out for one another. I love to sing and dance. I'm a joyful person. I can sing for hours the different folk songs I learned as a child in my mother country, Bhutan. I do not want to go to resettle, but this is what my son wants, and all the younger people. They want to resettle for work and for their children. I will go with them because they are family, and family is most important to me. But I do not want to leave my life here. What will become of me in a new country? Will I be forgotten by my family as they try to make a new life for themselves, as I tried to do in Nepal? Will I become the old man from the movie they showed us in the resettlement class, sitting in the corner, doing nothing until I die in a foreign land? I do not want to go. If my life were a book, the title would be Uprooted from My Homes.
Indra Maya Kadal, female, age 48, Kadunabari Camp, Nepal. During my childhood in Bhutan, it was tradition for sons to attend school, but not daughters. My mother was very sick all of the time, so all of the responsibilities for the home and the family fell solely on me. Whether cooking meals, cleaning, tending to livestock, or caring for my younger siblings, I was just too busy to attend school. If I was just given the chance for an education, I would have taken it. All that I wanted was just the chance to learn up to class 2, just to learn how to write. But instead, I was left sad, unsatisfied. I wasn't even given a chance. But then 20 years ago, the Bhutanese army began terrorizing our villages. All around us, houses were set aflame, and out of desperation, we fled Bhutan, leaving everything behind. All of our cattle, all of our possessions, all of our money, everything was gone. When I moved into the Kadunabari camp with my husband, he became very ill and unable to work. Now, not only was I obligated to care for my home and care for my children, I also needed to find a way to provide for them. I had no education, so what was I supposed to do? Every day, depression lingered over me as I begged others for money, but nobody obliged. I was helpless and hopeless. Then finally I sought help from the Bhutanese Refugee Women's Forum in the camp. I applied to participate in their loan program and was granted 5,000 rupees to start my own small general store. The first days of business were disheartening, and I could only sell items for 4 rupees. I worried that I would never be able to pay back my loan, and a constant scare always filled my heart. However, I remained persistent. To be successful, I just needed to believe in myself and find strength in that. Soon, I began selling 50 rupees a day, and then more than 80. Each day when I returned home, I set aside 20 rupees and began building up my savings. I finally had the encouragement that I'd been lacking for so long in life. My success meant that I was finally able to provide for my children and care for my home, and to ensure that all of my sons and all of my daughters had the chance to attain an education, the education that I never received. This, more than anything, makes me proud. If my life were a book, the title would be Successes and Sacrifices of a Daughter and Mother.
Chandra, Bahadur, Thapa, male, age 73, Beldangi 1 camp, Nepal. I've moved so many times, but Bhutan remains the center of my thoughts and my heart. Growing up in Bhutan was like living a golden life. I would walk to school every day, and when I returned, my neighbors would ask me questions because they never got to go to school. I could play with my friends, play in the jungle, and eat fruits and vegetables. But then the government of Bhutan closed the school for not complying with the national regulations. And quickly, my golden life disappeared. The restrictions and laws passed against me and my neighbors meant we all had to leave my country, my community, and my home. I arrived in Nepal 20 years ago and lived by the Kankai Bridge with my family. We lived by the river for 9 months, living in desolation. I think probably 20 people died a day from sickness and from the heat. Every day we missed home and remembered what we had lost and what we had given up. When we were moved to the Kadunabari camp, I was declared a refugee. I lived in Kadunabari for many years, but this year I was moved to Beldangi. I didn't get to decide where or when we moved. In our new hut, the bamboo is woven too loosely, and anyone walking by can see inside. We also can't get fruits or vegetables in the camp. My family needs more food. I feel that I will never be fully healthy as I was in Bhutan. Health is a wonderful but inaccessible dream. Every day I think of Bhutan, where I lived in a house and my family owned enough land to feed everyone comfortably. More than anything, I want to go back to Bhutan. I don't want to resettle. I don't want to join my family in the US. I want to go home, back to where I had money and could work hard and be successful. I'm currently corresponding with the government of Nepal to see if I can go back to Bhutan. If they do not allow me to repatriate, my sons and I will fight with the Bhutanese government. I will do anything to go back home. I value it more than my own life. Every time I close my eyes, I dream that I am still in Bhutan. Then I wake up and cry because I realize I am not at home. If my life were a book, the title would be Struggle and Longing for Home.
Neha Maya Bhattarai, female, age 19, Sanischare camp, Nepal. I have lived here in this camp my entire life. My family and I, we used to have good times together. We would all go to festivals and dance and eat with one another, but that was before. 6 years ago, my elder brothers and sisters left the camp and resettled to America. Then we stopped celebrating. We talked to my brothers and sisters through the internet cafe, but most of the time, we all just end up crying because meeting this way is not really meeting. It is not enough. I wish for my resettlement to be faster so that I can be reunited with my brothers and sisters. Except, I don't know when I will see them again. My father is sick, and this sadness only makes him worse. All the family responsibilities fall on me now, and I am very unhappy. I used to like the community in the camp, and it was once a beautiful environment. There are a lot of people around, and they would enjoy themselves and have fun. But now that so many people have resettled to the US, it is so empty around here. All of my friends have left. I have no one to go to the markets with, no entertainment, no enjoyment. I leave the camp as much as possible, just to escape the emptiness. But I have a garden in front of my hut, and the scent of the flowers comforts me and makes me feel good. There are a lot of changes in the camp, but my garden remains beautiful year-round. And although I am sad about my resettled friends and family, I find a peace in my heart through my relationship with the garden. But if they could just bring back all the people who have resettled to the US, I'd rather stay here in this camp than move to America. My life for a book, the title would be The Lonely Girl.
The Iraqi refugee population of Cairo, Egypt, arrived after 2003 in an attempt to escape the mayhem that ensued following the American invasion of their homeland. A country with a rich history and culture, now torn by war, Iraq's last 30 years have been turbulent, to say the least. In 1980, Iraq and Iran engaged in an 8-year war that hurt the country's economy and security. Later, in August of 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, an act to which the United States responded rapidly, further diminishing the country's economic and political security. After this, the United Nations placed an arms embargo and economic sanctions on the country, damaging Iraq's stability even more. During this period of instability, the Kurds and the Shia rebelled against Saddam Hussein's oppressive regime. The government violently suppressed both groups, which led many of them to flee the country. The United States invaded Iraq in 2003, overthrew the Ba'ath regime, and deposed Saddam Hussein. The United States then set up a weak and ineffective transitional government that was supposed to ensure the smooth transition of power from the old government to one that the people wanted. Rather, this government was both ineffective and unaccommodating. The Shia were hastily placed in power, and sectarian violence engulfed the nation, as militant campaigns against the current regime, the previous regime, the United States, supporters of Saddam, the Sunnis, and the Shia swept the nation. This violence served to divide the country and its people, resulting in what the UNHCR estimated to be 4.7 million refugees, 2.7 million of whom are internally displaced within Iraq's borders, and 2 million of whom became refugees after having fled the country. This was the largest flow of refugees from any country in the Middle East since the creation of Israel in 1948. The Iraqi refugees fled to a number of nearby countries in the region, arriving in large numbers to Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and Lebanon, and in smaller numbers to Iran and Turkey. The refugees with whom we worked are the Iraqi refugees of Cairo, Egypt. Egypt hosts the 5th largest urban refugee population in the world, and most of Egypt's refugee population lives in or around its capital, Cairo. With nearly 20 million inhabitants, Cairo, Egypt is one of the largest and most densely packed cities in the world. Among those 20 million inhabitants, many refugee populations are represented in Egypt, including Sudanese, Eritrean, Ethiopian, Somali, and Iraqi refugees. Because Iraqi refugees live mainly in the city, as opposed to living in camps like the Bhutanese, their position in the refugee world is quite different. That is, instead of living in a camp in which food is distributed, housing, however meager, is provided, and education, again, however insufficient, is available. They survive largely separated from the UNHCR and other refugee aid organizations, sprawled throughout a large and expansive city. Refugees in Egypt are not given permanent residency, and thus are not legally allowed to work or enroll their children in the public education system. Iraqi refugees often rely on savings and remittances to ensure the education of their children, which must come from private schools in the area. Stipends and aid services are available for refugees. However, they must seek out the organizations themselves. Financial assistance is limited, temporary, and available only to the most vulnerable refugees, which, according to the UNHCR, means a refugee who has some debilitating medical need, is a single mother, has experienced violence or torture, or is a minor between the ages of 16 and 18. Even then, financial services are a mere 150 to 165 Egyptian pounds per month, which translates to less than $30. The Egyptian government does not support the refugee population, nor does it particularly condone the presence of aid services. In fact, the government recently began scrutinizing aid organizations, which resulted in many of them closing down for undetermined amounts of time. The situation of the Iraqi refugees in Egypt is further complicated because they are not permitted to work illegally. In Iraq, many Iraqis were educated with college degrees, working in professions like law, dentistry, and science. Many were middle and upper-class citizens, and this has made their transition particularly difficult. Because they are relying on finite funds, and because assistance is limited and meager, refugees are in an extremely precarious situation. Living conditions in the city are generally more cramped and less stable than the lives of the Iraqis before their displacement. This, in addition to their financial insecurity situation, has resulted in a substantial reduction in the Iraqi refugees' living conditions and has profoundly affected their hala nafsiya, or psychological well-being. After the Egyptian revolution, safety concerns for refugees in Cairo increased substantially due to a rise in the number of gangs, home invasions, and sexual assaults. In combination with the post-revolution crackdown on NGOs, which affected refugee aid organizations, refugee livelihoods have become significantly more precarious. A glimmer of hope lies in the eyes of Iraqi refugees, despite the immense magnitude of their problems. Resettlement. Resettlement is the process by which refugees are moved into another country because they cannot return home, or because their current country of residence resists local integration. However, resettlement remains a far-off dream for the vast majority of Iraqi refugees. America put specialized programs in place to expedite the resettlement of Iraqi refugees after the invasion. However, shortly after, a change in policy drastically diminished resettlement rates. For 2011, a mere 500 of 70,000, less than 1% of Iraqis were resettled from Egypt. Today, you will hear stories from a number of Iraqi families, each with unique concerns and responsibilities, fears and reservations, blessings and misfortunes. However, within this diversity, there exists a striking uniformity of troubles and disparities caused by their displacement and their current existence in Egypt. We hope the stories today will give you a picture of just how extensively displacement has affected their lives. The length of their stay in Egypt is now surpassing 6 years for some and more for others, and funds are running low. This population is experiencing an unacceptable degree of political silence. And to repeat a question asked by the refugees we interviewed, when will they find a place of peace and rest?
Dunya,
Layla,
Amr.
Nora, Amal,
Mustafa. Dunya am a female, age 35, Nasser City, Egypt. I am a mother. Do you see my two beautiful kids? They are the most important things in my life, and in their names, I want resettlement. We need resettlement. I want to be able to pay for things. I want to be able to leave my house without being afraid that I cannot afford anything. I want to go to the doctor without feeling embarrassed when I'm referred for further medical tests, knowing that the referrals mean nothing to me because I cannot afford them. I want to be able to pay their entire rent without being dependent on others. I want my own home with furnishings that I choose. Back in Iraq, I had a home, a nice, well-decorated, big home where all four of my children and my husband and I lived together. There were palm trees outside, and things were just beautiful. But after the invasion, Iraq was finished. Everything was destroyed. Everything was gone. Every beautiful thing was gone. Yet I went back to Iraq. That's when my husband and I started to fight. But we had no money. What was I supposed to do? We sold our home and everything we had. But the money, it ran out. All of it. I couldn't look at my kids and know that I wasn't doing everything I could for them to become educated like I was, and everyone I knew was back in Iraq. Like they should have the right to be. And he couldn't go back. His office exploded years ago, and people have tried to kill him before we left. He can't even go visit our own daughter back in Iraq. I had to go. Every day, every single day, I heard about a colleague's death. Gunshot to the head, or the many bombs and explosions, just like my very own brother's death. But I had to stay for my family. And when I returned to Cairo, my husband couldn't take it anymore. He left us here alone in this chaos, where I cannot get a worker's permit, where my kids cannot get an education, where I cannot be with my entire family. I feel like a stranger. In this life I live, I am always a stranger.
When I was in Iraq, I felt like a stranger because my family left me and everything was diminishing before my own eyes. But when I came to Egypt, I lost my home, my country, and my family. I want 1 week, just 1 week. If I could be with my family, be in peace, and feel some stability, maybe I can retrieve my hope. Just 1 week. If my life were a book, the title would be Hope. Why am I titling it Hope? Because maybe if I title it Hope, something will happen.
Layla Ahmed, female, age 52, Giza, Egypt. How can you say that all Iraqi men are good in comparison to other Middle Eastern men? That they would never take on a second wife, like other Middle Eastern men do? My husband took a second wife, and afterwards refused to give me a divorce. Therefore, I still belong to him as his wife, which according to Eastern values, is that I couldn't work, drive my car, or even put on makeup. I had had a love story with my husband, so it's painful for me to remember such memories with him. He kept telling me that he must marry again. But according to Iraqi law, a husband's first wife must approve of his second marriage. And when I refused, he hit me for the first time. He broke my front teeth, which is why I currently have prosthetic teeth. One time, when he was very drunk and angry, he pushed me to the ground, put his foot on my back, and pulled back my hair, telling me he wanted to make me handicapped to provide an excuse for a second marriage. I believe this was all related to his mental health, and it caused a lot of problems for my family and me. However, I've always tried to provide a good picture of him as a husband and as a father to my children, so they don't hate him. I always convince them that they have to be successful in their jobs, just like their father was. I've suffered very, very, very much by my husband, but I can't say everything here. Just as I want to provide a good picture of him to my children, I do as well to the others in my community. When he left to Qatar with his second wife, I had to take on a large responsibility to take care of my home and my children. Before, everything was done by my husband. When Iraq was invaded by the Americans, I spent a lot of money to protect us in case Saddam or America used chemical weapons on us. I bought face masks and prepared a safety room in my house, covering the windows with blankets. I also bought a hut made of a material that doesn't allow chemical gases in. These were all the responsibilities for a man, but I carried out these responsibilities for my family by myself, and I believe I did well. I feel like I'm the only victim in this situation. All I want to do is forget about my husband. And the greatest benefit about going to the United States is that there, I will be able to forget everything about him, including his name. Although I know I'm the victim in this situation, I know that it comes from God, and therefore, I need to respect that. If my life were a book, the title would be The Sacrificed Woman.
Amr El-Sabah, male, age 46, Nasser City, Egypt. We're so glad you're here. We're so glad to have you. We hope you can help us. We have many, many problems. Ever since the invasion, we've had many, many problems. You're only here for research? Then I want to know why you are in my home. Why are you here? We have so many problems. It's your fault. It's the fault of America that I am here in this awful apartment. It's your fault that my family is hungry. It's your fault that I can no longer afford for my children to go to school. It's your fault that I'm away from my family. I have no money. I have no job. I have no access to medical care. What am I to do? You tell me, what am I to do? I'm sorry. I'm just so frustrated. I'm not against the American people. But if they were suffering like we were, I would stand with them in solidarity, citizen to citizen. Why didn't the Americans stand with us? I'm sorry. You're my guest, and I'm sorry. I'm just so frustrated. I'm ready. Let's begin the interview. I left Iraq in 2003 after my brother was kidnapped for 6 years and murdered. My mother cried so much that she lost sight in both of her eyes. She and my father could no longer take the tragedy, and they died from their sadness. My eldest son was diagnosed with cancer. He had to drop out of college. My other children are still in school, but this will be their last year. I could no longer afford the fees, and I must take them out. I love my children so much, I live for them, and I wish to return life back to them. This tragedy has made them lifeless. Please meet my eldest son. I love my children. I love them so much. Can I ask you a question? Are you happy in life? I wish for you to make my family and my son. I wish for you to make us happy in life. And don't you forget us when you go back to the United States. You know, you could write a movie with the story I just told. The title? My life has been difficult and quite tense. The title should have something to do with that. You can decide.
Nora Hassan, female, age 52, 6th of October City, Egypt. My life? It has been a whirlwind of events. The first thing I can't forget is the war with Iraq and Iran. And after that, I was married in 1979, and I had my daughter in 1980. The war started then. My husband was in the military then. My husband? A lot happened with my husband. Our family didn't see him often because of the war, but when we did see him, he was in the hospital. Then he was called to participate in the war of 1991, the invasion of Kuwait. That's a painful event. We had to move to another village because of the war, and he got so sick one day that he had to go to the hospital. My sister wouldn't even let me see him. I was told to go home. Shortly after that, in April 2006, he passed away. I guess I could talk about that. He got so sick, I had to learn how to be his nurse and give him injections for his seizures. Sometimes 2, 3, just in the morning alone. No one knew what was wrong with him. One day he woke up, he went to his parents' house, like normal, except he was in pain. He went to the hospital and died that day. After his death, I left my country and our family moved to Egypt, August 26, 2007. At first I felt comfortable when we first came because in Iraq there's no water, there's no electricity, or there's no security. But now it's different. Egyptians try to take advantage of me and other Iraqis. There's no safety here either. Iraq was a good place, but now the condition is just so bad. I don't think I can go back. I lost my husband, I lost my home, and we all lost our future. I feel like there's nothing I can do with the burden put on my family. If my life were a book, the title would be The Pressure of Life.
Amal Hamoud, female, age 43, Nasser City, Egypt. T. Habibi? I had everything. We had a house. We had a real home with furniture that I picked out and designed myself. They threatened him, my husband, when we were in Iraq. We could not stay. We took everything we could. In Iraq, he used to work as a manager for 5-star hotels. Now, in Egypt, he reads the newspaper all day. My brother was my main support. They took him from me. They set him up to die a miserable death. Look, here's a picture they sent me after the explosion. It only shows what was left of him. Limbs, blood, only half of his face. I stay in here all day. If I wanted to go out with my friends for things like coffee, I need money. I can't even take my children out. My son is still back in Iraq. I wait for his Skype call. I see his face. I hear his voice cry and say he needs help, but I can do nothing about it. I gave birth to them, my oldest son and daughter. They are my children, but now they are so far from me I barely know them anymore. We are a dysfunctional family and we are scattered everywhere across this globe. It gets dark. I lock the door, but the lock never helps. I hate it. I'm really tired. I'm not comforted. not even 1% safety for my children here in Egypt. My case has been at the migration office since 2008, but I haven't heard anything from them. I don't think we'll ever leave. Will they call tomorrow and say that we can move? Can we finally reach a place without war, terror, and threats? Or will they let us down once more, tell us to pack everything, sell what we don't need, and then say that they made a mistake so that we can return to this room, this place that is not my home? I still have hope. I do. It is the smallest bit, but it is there. I just want peace. I pray for peace. Kids, come and grab your report cards. They will succeed one day. I know they will. They have to. Their success is all that we have left. If my life were a book, the title would be No Life for Whom You Are Calling For.
Mustafa, male, age 19, 6th of October City, Egypt. I tell you different stories. I tend, even, to tell myself different things. I will try my best to tell you the truth. What wouldn't I say? What could you ask that would make me uncomfortable? I said, and I will, tell you anything. It doesn't upset me to remember, to speak of the kidnapping, when they held me for ransom, when they screwed my family out of $40,000. You can't recover from a financial detriment like that. And I remember, and I tell you. Why wouldn't I? It's just my life. It was for 3 days that I was gone, and I just remember opening my eyes in the hospital, looking up at the world after it happened, looking up, and not being able to look back. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I just could not remember. It is just another story that I can't remember. And I speak of leaving Iraq so comfortably, as if it didn't change the world around me, as though before and after aren't two separate stories. I don't talk about memories of home or what I miss. You might think that it is because I don't remember, that it is because I was so young. I don't understand why you ask about my nationality, what that means and how that changed when I left. It's just, I was there in Iraq, now I'm here in Egypt, and I will be there in America. So why say I was Iraqi, I am Egyptian, I will be American? I don't understand these questions. As if my mom making Iraqi food is some big symbol of her nationality, a great big way for her to remember Iraq for herself. I don't understand because to me, it's just the food she makes, and it is just my life. But I can't live here. Well, of course, I can live here. I can make friends, volunteer, smoke shisha, even take a picture of myself in front of the pyramids and put it up on Facebook, just like you would do. But I can't go to school. I can't make a life. I can live, but I won't have a life. I can in America. I will in America. I hold on to the hope that is true. And so I meet you and tell you of how I'm going to America in just 4 months. How I will go and my life will begin. That will be my story. How I go to school and become a lawyer, and one day help the helpless refugees in Cairo. I will tell you anything, but it might not be true. Maybe my story changes because, unlike all the others, it really is just a story. My life hasn't even started yet. The title of my life? Well, how about I let you know after I'm given a chance to live?
Through these stories, we have tried to give voice to the realities of refugee lives. We hope to have illuminated how the large, seemingly impersonal events of history and current events have created deeply personal dilemmas that must be addressed every single day of a refugee's life. While we have used the framework of law and politics to guide our analysis of the ethics involved in refugee policy and practice, our research has also reinforced that what we generically call refugee issues permeate the daily experiences of millions of individuals around the world. The purpose of our research process, the life story interview, is to give a glimpse into these individual experiences, while also shedding light on the much larger process of which they are a part. In our research, we sought to discover what brings meaning to the lives of refugees through their individual stories, and then chose to highlight stories based on the themes that emerged in our interviews. The stories from Nepal emphasize shifting community, the strain of resettlement, pride in accomplishment, and intergenerational tensions. The Bhutanese refugee camps function as a model for the rest of the world, as aid organizations are commended for the stability and structure that they have developed over the last 20 years. The stories highlight the presence of aid organizations, but they also show that the organization and duration of the Bhutanese refugee camps can be a source of hardship, as refugees struggle with the changing atmosphere of their close camp community through the process of resettlement. In addition, these stories emphasize the themes of uncertainty and concern over resettlement. Talking to resettled family only through the internet and seeing emptiness where friends once lived, this is resettlement for those still in the camps. To be able to care for one's family and to produce something of value on one's own are widely shared desires across this group, although people differ in the ways they imagine fulfilling those desires. One woman has attained her dream by opening a shop, while one elderly man believes his dreams can be reached only if he gets back to Bhutan. Despite all their struggles, the Bhutanese express some hope for their futures through religious practice, prospects of future opportunity, and strong commitment to family. The Iraqi stories highlight the shifting livelihoods, hopelessness, and lack of educational opportunities in Cairo. People commonly express a desire to continue their education and support themselves, but emphasize frustration and sadness that they have no means to do so. These monologues reveal the importance of having a means to use their education and skills, even as some refugees struggle to find any job opportunities at all. We hear the sound of hopelessness fueled by an Egyptian government that expects Iraqi refugees to be self-sufficient, but so restricts their rights as to make this an unattainable goal. Responsibility for family, a potential source of pride, turns into a source of shame. A woman struggles for her children to maintain a relationship with her abusive ex-husband. Mothers and fathers fret about their inability to pay for schooling, to provide anything for their children. Each day's worries build upon those of the day before, and what they once expected to be temporary hardship, a brief interval, has become the story of their lives. Despite the distinct differences between the Iraqi and Bhutanese refugees, both groups of monologues emphasize both populations' nostalgia and desire to return to their countries of origin and a past where they could shape the directions of their lives. Both sets of stories also demonstrate anxiety for the future. We keep in the forefront of our minds that these stories are still ongoing today. The Iraqi and Bhutanese populations represent less than 3% of the total refugee population worldwide. Globally, forced migration is continually occurring as old crises persist and new crises evolve. Every minute, 8 people are forced to leave their homes for fear of violence or persecution. The persistence of displacement creates a population of millions in need of solutions on the international, national, and local levels. While the magnitude of the situation is intimidating, there are also realistic opportunities for involvement and influence. We see these opportunities firsthand in North Carolina, which is resettling thousands of refugees per year. We emerge from this semester of study and engagement prepared to act and to educate, holding in our minds and our hearts not just an understanding of refugee issues, but also all of the individual refugees' stories, the struggles and the tears, the friends and the children, the violence and the disorder, the rituals and the work, all the things that constitute their lives. We are so appreciative for your attendance tonight and are glad that we were able to share these stories and experiences with you. We would now like to invite you to join us in a reception outside where we can meet and talk over food and drink. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We hope to see you at the reception.